Hi everyone, I'm Kate Riley, and this is our Module 5 lecture. And we had 3 readings this week. So we had Towards a Field of Intersectionality Studies, Theory, Applications, and Praxis. And we had I Would Rather Be a Cyborg Than a Goddess, Becoming Intersectional in Assemblage Theory. And then our ancillary reading, Practicing Love, Black Feminism, Love Politics, and Post-Intersectionality. So the first artist, or the key artist I chose for this lecture that I thought had some nice connections is an artist I got to work with when I was working at the Institute of Contemporary Art in Boston. Her name's Mickalene Thomas, and her work's changed a little bit over the years, but she is from New Jersey, born 1971, and she explores different ideas of intersectionality through identity, race, gender, sexuality through her portraits. And she combines different elements from different genres, eras, meaning, and mirroring her interrelational patterns. So she challenges ideas of identity and stereotypes imposed on Black women specifically, but she offers a really multi-dimensional perspective through not only her imagery, but her material choices. She does these really cool mixed media pieces. If you've never seen her work in person, I would highly recommend it. But she also explores intersectionality by sharing her experiences of marginalized and questioning how race, class, gender intersect in visual culture. And just through all these elements of her culture and her visual representation of intersectionality, I think she just ties together a lot of the ideas of our readings in a really nice way. There's just so many artists that explore these ideas. I was looking at Kara Walker and Kende Wiley, but I kind of landed on her because I thought for our readings she fit really nicely. Okay, so our first primary reading was Towards a Field of Intersectionality Studies, Theory, Application, and Praxis. And this had the 3 primary authors were Cho, Crenshaw, McCall. And this text explores intersectionality through a variety of different theories and perspectives. The authors looked at how to interpret intersectionality in like multiple roles and facets, and they also engaged in differences in order to address the complexities of intersectionality. And one idea they brought up is it's common for that like oversimplification of these ideas. So over time, intersectionality has become, like they say, like a gathering place for open-ended investigations of the overlapping and conflicting dynamics of race, class, sexuality, and other inequalities. So the authors argue that intersectionality examines how power structures shape identity within specific socio-political contexts, focusing on less rigid categories and more on their fluid dynamic nature. So they engage in like ongoing debates of limitations of scope of intersectionality. And the historical focus on like Black women, whether it can address a broader issue of power and marginalization. And then it also underscores like the wider, more diverse application of the intersectional framework, highlighting just the need for continued exploration with these dynamics. And they really also emphasize that collaboration is crucial for advancing the theoretical and the practical understanding of intersectionality. Great. Um, okay. I had a little trouble with this reading, but I would rather be a cyborg than a goddess. Our next reading, Becoming Intersectional in Assemblage Theory, by Poor. And this text delves into the tensions between intersectionality and assemblage, questioning the compatibility and the limitations. And the author explores how intersectionality is grounded in feminist theory, and it examines how the interconnectedness of race, class, gender, and how it's often the constructs of the other, particularly with women of color. And this text like critiques the growing use of intersectional and warns against its oversimplification, similar to the last text, and the potential to recenter uh, white liberal feminism. And one quote from that text is, indeed, many of the cherished categories of intersectional mantra, originally starting with race, class, gender, now including sexuality, nation, religion, age, and disability. And they're amongst the most colonial agendas and regimens of violence. So he's like introducing assemblage theory, which focuses on relationships and patterns, rather than just like the static categories. And then like both frameworks can provide valuable insights and particularly regarding discipline, control, identity. But key again, it's just cautions against overly rigid or simplistic application of any of those. So I think all the paradigms just kind of come to the conclusion that there's a lot of complexities with it in political, social, and institutional power structures. I think for our students and as our educators, kind of relating those back to a lot of these contemporary artists, um, sharing their stories and personal experiences, I think is a really nice way connecting to these texts because it does prevent against that oversimplification. So I think that's just kind of one thing that kind of kept coming to my mind when I was reading these. There's just so many amazing contemporary artists that are dealing with these issues. Okay, and for our ancillary reading, practicing love, Black feminism, love politics, and post-intersectionality by Nash, and proposes love politics transcends the limitations of identity, politics, and intersectionality. One big group exhibition I worked at the ICA Boston was Love, Art, and Politics in the 1980s. It traveled all around the country, but there's a book too that's amazing. I would definitely recommend that as an art resource for your classroom. But if you didn't get to see it, I would look at the book. It has just so many connecting, amazing ideas to this text that I highly recommend. Um, so for this text, she's arguing that love is a powerful tool for healing and reclaiming Black uh, female self for remaking and transcending selfhood, ultimately forming new political communities. So Nash critiques that identity politics for reinforcing rigid categories, similar to the other readings, like race and gender, suggests that effective politics driven by emotion, like desire and optimism, offers like maybe a more complex and transformative approach. So she calls for embrace of love politics rooted in womanism, which centers with self-love, commitment to humanity, and communal uplift. So Nash contrasts her approach with like Peirce's intersectionality and suggests that assemblage is effective politics align more with the version of political work that is future focused and utopian, aiming to create an inclusive and hopeful communities. Those are kind of my major takeaways for that reading. So for questions from the readings, I did three primary questions. So can broad issues like intersectionality best be understood on a local level with consideration of a simple example or societal inequality visible to a local community? I think it's just bringing that like global to local, like maybe students could connect to that more. But I think that's a question for you guys. I think thinking about some of those contemporary artists too. How can those connect to maybe local communities? And then my next question is how Black feminist thinking, which emphasizes the importance of emotions and love in the political landscape, challenge dominant narratives of romance and power while fostering the creation of transformative political communities. And then what vehicles might be used to expand thinking to offer a generally inclusive environment for acceptance and social growth. Excuse me. Okay. So overall, a few realizations I had when reading these texts. Intersectionality, while crucial for understanding overlapping identities. It can risk oversimplification, as it may unintentionally recenter dominant narratives. This insight and critique many categories used in intersectionality, like race, class, gender, are themselves products of colonial histories, pushing us to reconsider how we approach these frameworks. And then Nash critiques that some of those ideas about intersectionality by suggesting that ideas fit too conveniently into our existing categories, and that these ideas on assemblage stress feelings that can affect and fit into Nash's ideas of effective politics. And then my last aha moment for this text is that understanding that assemblage theory as introduced by these authors shifts the focus from like static categories and that oversimplification of categories with race, gender, to more dynamic relationships and patterns. And that perspective does challenge traditional views of identity by empowering people to share their own stories, and maybe even like our ancillary reading having that like idea of like love politics, and how it emphasizes power structures and identities are constantly in flux, and keeping all of those ideas in mind will offer a more nuanced way to analyze our social and political complexities beyond the fixed categories. All right, guys, that was my run through on our 3 readings. Thank you.